Hi, friends, and welcome to Life Intended, the podcast for women on a journey to take ownership of their own lives.
We're your hosts, Kelly Berry and Sadie Wackett, leaders, coaches, friends, and women on our own journeys of self-leadership.
Here, we don't believe women need to be fixed.
We believe they need to stop seeking permission and start leading lives that they choose and they design.
Life Intended is about unlearning truths that have been handed to us and start trusting your truth and living in alignment with what matters most.
Each week, we're bringing you bold, honest conversations that challenge the stories holding you back, help you uncover and step into your own voice, your own purpose, and your own power.
From inspirational guest interviews to unfiltered chats between the two of us, you'll leave every episode with insights, tools, and the kind of encouragement that sticks.
This is your space to wake up, break free, and lead the life you were always meant to live. Let's get into it.
Today, I have Dr. Gabby Pellicci, PhD. She is a best-selling author, writing coach, and professor of holistic health and integrative medicine. Her debut memoir, All This Healing Is Killing Me, became a #1 Amazon bestseller, and her second book, The Last Ceremony, explores themes of trauma, transformation, and spiritual awakening through the lens of plant medicine. For those of you just listening on audio, she's holding them up. She has them both here, and they'll both be linked in the show notes too. With a PhD in transformative studies and over 20 years of teaching experience, Dr. Gabby guides aspiring authors to tell their stories through her private writing retreats in West Palm Beach, Florida. Her work blends science, soul, and storytelling to help others turn pain into purpose on the page. Named one of the top 100 women of the future in 2022, she has been featured in MSNBC, Spirituality and Health, and spoken at major events like South by Southwest and TEDx this year. I'm sure we'll talk more about that, and learn more about her work at GabriellePellicci.com. Welcome, Gabby. That was a long list. You have done a lot, and it's a lot of really, really, really cool stuff. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. Welcome.
You did so good.
Thanks.
You have such like a news anchor personality.
Not my first time, and yeah, I love it. So I think I love it.
My favorite thing you said was feel as good as it looks.
Mhm.
I did like a blog thing this morning about this, about like everything looks really curated. And until you kind of pull back the curtain, you don't know if the people really feel as good as they look. I'm one of those people, like, swear on my books, I feel as good as I look, but that's not always the case. And it's really hard to navigate that, like, especially when you're seeking friendships or mentors or communities or things like that. So I really liked that phrase that you said.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's one of, as Sadie and I have been working on like the rebrand and really like what Life Intended is all about, that is the core. Because what you just said is so true. You don't really know what you're going to get. You don't really know how people are representing themselves. And because of that, it puts you in this place where you feel like everything that you see is what it is. And that's not the case. There's a lot of women that are really, really struggling. There's a lot of women that really have lost themselves, that don't know where to go, what to do, but they're very good at putting up a front, at appearing as if everything is okay. And so our work is all designed to help reconnect that disconnect and help them figure out, if I want my life to look like this, how do I make it feel like that too? So I'm glad that resonated
Yeah,
with you, because that's our goal. And you're an expert at this.
I do consider myself an
Yeah.
expert at this.
Yeah.
I'm not good at a lot of things, but
Yeah.
this I am really, really good at. And I like how you reemphasize that what you see is not always what you get. And I think that women and humans in general are doing themselves a real disservice when they pretend that it's good and it's not that good, because you're literally closing that door for people to help you, for people to see you, people to
Mm-hmm.
support you, for like for you to alleviate the struggle and the suffering. You're doing yourself such a disservice when when you have on the mask and you have the facade and you have the representative. And I know that we're conditioned to do that. I know that it's not something we just like wake up and decide, but it's the breakdown of that that really gives us the most healing and the most freedom. And it's intuitive. It feels like jumping off a cliff,
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
let all that out in the world.
Yeah, I am a recovering "I'm fine" responder. Like, "How are you?" "I'm fine." When I was anything but, and there was just like this it was a combination of just unwillingness, didn't really know how to be vulnerable, didn't really wanna be vulnerable, and I held it together for a really long time until I really, really wasn't fine, and then it was like, "Now what do I do?" So, there's so many directions I wanna take this, but I think the first would be wanna connect this to the title of your first book because isn't that, like, exactly what we're talking about? All this healing is killing me? Yeah, where did that
I
come
was
from?
like you. I wasn't an I'm fine. I was an I'm perfect.
Yeah.
I was like, I was in such denial of like what was actually going on. I was in hiding. I had all the secrets. I deeply believe that if people knew who I actually was, I would be cast out of the garden of life and like I would just be wandering the planet. Like I was so misinformed and confused. And yet I think the call and the pull towards healing is stronger than all of that. I think it's stronger than all of that. And I think like it is the natural intelligence of being human, of consciousness, of aliveness, to be moving towards wholeness and moving towards healing. And that was very much alive in me, while the ego part of me was like, no, 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 don't show emotion, don't do anything. And then, so in this first book, All This Healing is Killing Me, I wrote down everything I didn't want anyone to know about me because I was just like, dripping in shame. I was convinced that like people would just be like, "You're terrible," or "You're what," and so I just did it anyway because the pull to wholeness was stronger than the fear, and I did it. And what a relief, Kelly! What a relief! It's such a relief. Like people were like, "You're amazing. I love you. You're so strong. You're a survivor. You're inspirational." And like I was like, "Oh," and it wasn't so much about the validation of being someone other than I thought that I was, as much as it was that, like, I was like, "Oh, all this stuff was lies. This was all lies." Like, keep the secrets, pretend to be someone else, like, you're the only one that ever had this feeling or this experience, like, it was all lies. So I just got to get all of that out of the way, you know? And so then I could just really be creative or really have fun or really be authentic. And I wasn't trying so hard all the time to, like, adjust and adapt and you know what I mean? Like, fit
Oh, yeah.
myself in the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. I think that that's probably something that, like, people are really unaware of is all of the energy that it takes from us to hide from our whatever it is, either from your past or from your present or the shame that you feel, it takes a lot of energy to, like, contort and change to fit the situation just because you think that's the only way that people are gonna accept you or for whatever millions of reasons there are, it is draining to be anything other than authentic. And so I think you just spoke to that, like how freeing it felt, but I think that's probably something that just a lot of people aren't taking into consideration when they are choosing, I guess to go along with the title of your book, choosing the easy way, which is not opening the lid, not going inside, not seeing what's there, because a lot of people are just really afraid of what they're going to find because the healing journey is a hard one.
Yeah. It's really hard. It's hard because we set ourselves up for it being hard. I don't know what it was like 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago or whatever, but I know that now in the 21st century, going down the healing path, it's a warrior's path. It requires like an incredible amount of strength to confront all your own traumas and difficulties and insecurities and fears and things. And I also felt very strongly. The second book I wrote, The Last Ceremony, was about my plant medicine journeys. And in one of my journeys, the plants told me like, "Oh, you have to feel all the feelings of the women that came before you." And so there's also this theory that trauma can be generational, or we can be carrying stuff in our bodies, in our consciousness of others. So I don't claim to know like how the whole thing works, but I do know that if you embark on this journey, it's going to kill you and resurrect you many times over. What I've done is I've gotten in the practice of that as a practice. Like every time I get on the yoga mat or every time I do my meditation, like I let the drama die and I let something better come forth. I'm like always in this cycle of rebirth and reinvention. And so I've kind of gotten in the rhythm of this because nature is in the rhythm of this. We have winter, spring, summer, fall. It is not strange to nature that the thing dies and something new is born. That's the nature of things, you know? And like we have the moon cycles that are happening every 28 days. And so I've tried to get in sync with that so that it's not as bumpy. You know, it's still a practice, but I can say I don't suffer the way that I used to when I started all of this.
Yeah, thanks for all of that. So one of the things I met Gabby probably about a month ago now, I will say. And I walked into a coffee that some women, like local women, were having. I sat down. I was pretty late, but I sat down and there was already a conversation going on. So literally the first thing that I hear in this conversation is Gabby says, "You can't self-help your way out of trauma." And so I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, but that sounds interesting. Talk more about that. And so, the conversation evolved kind of to what we're seeing. And it was like, kind of like a group of coaches and people kind of in the space. But what we're seeing is all of this information overload. There are podcasts like this one, there are podcasts like lots of them. There are a million books, there's YouTube videos, there's your friend who read a book who wants to talk about something, but there's so many places to get information. So we started talking about like the difference between a learning journey and a healing journey. And so that I think is a really interesting topic. So I would like for you to tell us what that means and what the good parts of that and what are like kind of like maybe even the dangerous parts of that.
Yeah. I mean, let's remind your listeners right now that they have a body. Like right now in this moment, like just be reminded right now in this moment, there's breath coming in and out of your body. It's going to happen about 25,000 times today. Your heart is beating, your blood is circulating. Just like you have a body, you're in a body. And everything that's ever happened to you is stored in your body. It's your nervous system is like, it's like a network. I don't know if you've ever seen a photo of it, but it looks like the roots when you pull out like weeds out of the ground, and it's in every single cell of your whole body. And that information system, it stores all the things that happened to you. And at some point somewhere, we were like so infatuated with our mind and with learning and with everything that we thought we could just like think or talk or think our way through things. And we got disconnected from the somatic experience, the physical experience, but that's where everything is. And so we have this very bizarre fascination with like learning our way out of situations. And I'm someone who's way overeducated. I have a PhD and 100 certifications and things. So like obviously I like learning as well, but none of that helped me with panic attacks or with nightmares or with menstrual cramps or whatever. Like it just doesn't help. You can read all the books about menstrual cramps you want, they're not going to make your menstrual cramps go away. Like it's not helpful. It's good for a framework. It's good for an understanding. It's very limited. And when I meet people who are like, did you read this book? Did you hear this podcast? Whatever. I say to them, what are your symptoms? What is it that you are trying to, which is what I said to our mutual friend. What are you trying to solve? Why are you reading this book? And initially it's kind of like, well, what do you mean? Well, you picked up the book for a reason. It's about manifestation or neuroscience. Like, what are you trying to manifest? Well, I want this thing to be successful. Why? Why? Because something, and once you kind of get into like, oh, actually, I'm really scared about my mortality. Like I've hit midlife and I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, like, well, my dad died when I was like 15. Okay, well, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. Now you're getting to the age approximately that your dad was. That's stored in your body, all this tension is coming up around it. You're having like restricted breathing. Your stomach is tight. Your skin is hot. You're feeling sweaty. That's a physical experience. then you need to deal with that. That's a physical thing. Yoga, breath work, body work, anything that targets the autonomic nervous system. There's different like chiropractic and structural things that you can do, acupuncture, whatever, plant medicine, because now you're actually doing restoration on the places where it's stored. It doesn't mean don't read the books, but like don't pretend that reading the books is the silver bullet. Like that's it's good to be informed, but you actually have to get in and do trauma healing if there's something there that's causing physical symptoms
Mhm.
in your
Yeah.
body.
I love all of that. And I think that I'm somebody who, before I even realized it, I've always had a lot of physical symptoms. I tell this story a lot to people. I don't know if I've ever told it on the podcast, but when I was in graduate school getting my MBA, and this is not to sound like any way, but I tell it because I think it is the first time in my life where I felt like I was in a room of people who were smarter than me and I wasn't equipped to handle it. And so I developed this physical response that anytime I was speaking in front of a crowd, my face turned bright red like a tomato. And that carried with me for, 15 plus years. And it's a very like physical response. And I didn't know what was going on and how that felt. And, it would happen no matter if I was like leading a meeting at work or on a Zoom call or, speaking in front of a crowd, I would just turn this bright red. And, I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. But I think that if we think about all of the times that we feel anxious or, we have negative self talk or something, there is always some kind of physical symptom that accompanies that. And a lot of times, we feel it physically before we understand it mentally, even if that time between like the feeling and knowing is microseconds, And I think just to speak to how important the somatic part is, our bodies are telling us these things before our brains even realize it.
Yeah, the body is brilliant. It's the
Mhm,
most miraculous, intuitive, intelligent thing on the
mhm,
planet. Like our bodies are unbelievable. They're just unbelievably sensitive and smart in their own way. Like you said, before you even have thought, before
mhm,
there's even like thought, their sensation. And one of the shifts that you make once you kind of get a little bit further down the road on this journey is going, oh, thank you, anxiety. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. There's something in the environment that isn't quite right, or there's something that's stored in my hard drive that isn't quite right. Thank you, anxiety. All right, let's see what's going on. In the same way that, like, when the smoke alarm goes off in your house, you're not like, what the hell? Right? Like, okay, if it went off because you made the bacon and whatever got smoky, but like, if it's legit going off, you're grateful that it went off.
mhm,
Like when the gas light comes on and says you're running out of gas, you're grateful because then you got to put more gas in the car. And we also have done this very weird thing where we're like, oh, emotions. What do you mean? Like, like what that's like a whole data set. That's like a whole lot of data that you have that's available to you about someone crossing your boundary or about, something you're afraid of happening that maybe is like legit something you should be afraid of happening. And we've gotten into a very messy, dysfunctional relationship with our emotions, which is what anxiety is. It's a fear of something happening in the future. And like you said, tapping into the body, it gives us wisdom. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I want to take a step back though, because I mentioned that first statement that you said, like you can't self help your way out of trauma. So I would like you, as someone who's like an expert in trauma, to give us kind of like what is the definition of trauma? What's the difference in like big T trauma, little T trauma? Like I think a lot of people are talking about it now, and I think it's important to really talk about what it is.
Yeah. Well, there's what everybody says it is, and then there's what Dr. Gabby says it is. So
Okay.
I'll start with what everybody says it is. So everybody says like trauma is like some disruptive event that's happened to you. Little trauma is like could be like potty training or failing a test in school. Big trauma could be any of the like Are you familiar with the adverse childhood experiences like divorce
I
or
am, but if you could go over those, I think that would be helpful.
yeah, you can Google it, but it's like there's like kind of the big things that happen to you when you're young, like your parents getting divorced or parent dying or, violence in the homes or things like that, that kind of like set up your nervous system and your biology in a certain way to be like more susceptible to illness, more susceptible to post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. And so they consider it to be like a psychological disruption. You had an experience of not being safe and that kind of stays with you and then it kind of attracts other situations in the future and you perpetuate this feeling of not being safe. That's a very kind of rudimentary mainstream explanation of trauma. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. The fact that it sits so much in psychology and not biology, it kind of irks me a little bit. There are some scholars like Body Keeps the Score and stuff, which I think we talked about at our meeting, that are grounding trauma more in the physical experience and looking at how it's stored in the body. That's not like the widespread main theory. Like a lot of it's kind of still sitting in the head part. Me, I take it like even a step further. So my first level of training in the world of healing arts. I have a PhD in holistic health and integrative medicine. Way, 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 way back when I was 19, my first level of training was in something called energy medicine. I trained with a bunch of nurses in the healing touch tradition, which is like a hands-on healing where you work with the energy field of the body. Also, still not totally mainstream accepted. But what I learned from a very young age was that emotion is not only like a thought and a feeling, but it's also like an energetic experience, meaning there's like an energy congestion. So my personal experience of trauma is kind of like a congestion of energy. Something happens to us and we freeze and that energy becomes undigested. It's normal for things to happen, but then we should metabolize and digest them and keep going. And you'll see this with animals, like an animal's being chased and then there's a book that's called like Why Zebras Don't Have Stress or something like anyway, I'd have to look it up. But they shake, which is also part of like a tradition of yoga, and they shake off that experience and they go on with their day. They keep, they keep moving. We freeze and then we never really process or digest that frozen part of us. So for me, it's not just about psychology, it's not just about biology, but there's actually a metabolism that has to happen there. I haven't heard other people talk about it in this way, but it's my experience. And I can feel it when I'm doing my yoga or my plant medicine or working with my traumatic experiences. I can actually feel how that energy starts to dissipate, or I could feel it like move through my body and like leave my body, whether it's through tears or, big breath or sweating or even purging. There's a lot of purging in plant medicine. So that's the kind of general experience for me. The other thing is that like if you think about anything that's congested in your house, maybe the pipes in your house or the gutters around your house, if you think of any area that's really congested, it's cumulative, right? So like there's some hair in the drain and then there's some more hair in the drain and then there's some more and then you're calling the plumber and you're spending $500 for him to snake the drain, right? So these areas of congestion, these areas of disturbance, they're also cumulative, which I think kind of, if you're not really familiar with the whole genre of trauma, you might think like, oh, it happened and it's over. You might think of it as like something like, in the kind of movie of your life. And that's actually not true. These are cumulative. So they start to like grow and accumulate, which is why a lot of times by the time you get to your 40s and you're having your midlife crisis, a lot of it is just like, well, you got a lot of
Like you're
undigested.
full. Like you're
You're
the glass
full.
is all the way
The
full.
toilet is backing up. The septic is backing up into the yard. We need to drain the septic, people. It's backing up. But I don't think your average human is like, oh, I'm all backed up with trauma. Look at me. Like, it's like, oh, it happened or something.
Mm-mm.
So we're still kind of catching up with our understanding of it. I think we should be like every quarter, every year at the least, cleaning out all this shit, like cleaning
Mm-mm.
out all this stuff. Like, who do you have resentments against? Where are you not forgiving yourself? What things, when you think of them, give you that sick feeling to your stomach, or that feel like any of that. Clean, 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 clean it up, clean it up, clean it up.
Yeah.
I have to do that pretty regularly because I like accumulate stuff really easily, but you should be doing it at least annually.
Yeah. I mean, it makes so much sense when you think about, there's just several things you said just in this conversation, that it's cumulative, that we have this relationship with emotion where we suppress it. And if you think about, like, if you just suppress and suppress and suppress and suppress all of these emotions and you never fully process them or let them pass through you, then it just makes sense that all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're bubbling over, like you're just, and however that manifests for you, I'm sure it manifests for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, but that's when you hear about people just having an absolute breakdown, like they just can't manage it anymore. So what do you when you
Think
talk
that's like also a sad place though, because if you're only trusting Western medicine, then you don't even see the dots connecting with this. Like you don't even see, like, I haven't dealt with my relationship with my dad and now I have heart disease. Like you don't even make any connection between a manifestation of cancer, of diabetes, chronic back pain, of fibromyalgia. Like, you don't even make any connection between all this shit that's not cleaned up and then all this other stuff that's now coming
Yeah,
online for you. An autoimmune disorder, what, like, because only in the realm of holistic and integrative medicine, which has its roots actually in medicine that's thousands of years old. Like that's what I did my dissertation research about, which is a topic for another conversation. But like your regular doctor not gonna, like, you're just gonna get like meds. Do you know what I mean? Like your regular average doctor is not gonna tell you that these things are connected.
yeah, yeah. So 1,000,000%, and that makes me think of another conversation that we had, um, about, like, what is the real need right now? Because there are a lot of people who are feeling a bunch of different ways, like maybe it spans everything from, like, they have had really bad trauma that they've never really, like, addressed, all the way to just, like, somebody who's kind of lived a normal life, but life, no matter what, is just stressful. But they don't have anybody to go to that can, like, assess them and say, "This is what's going on, this is where you need to go." Like, their yoga instructor can't do that, their doctor can't do that, even their therapist can't do that, so what do you see is this, like, giant gap in
It's a giant ass gap.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
Grand Canyon ass gap.
yeah. So tell us about what that is and what
I
you
don't
see.
even know. I don't even know. Well, I mean, to me, it was a scavenger hunt. It took me 25 years, right? It was a scavenger hunt. It was like following breadcrumbs, right? Like, do you know anybody that can help with this? Like reading the book, taking the workshop, and we talked about this with Sadie. Like Sadie's taking her like somatic training and like you're doing your stuff, right? Like to me, it was a scavenger hunt. Now, luckily, I have like a massive network of providers, practitioners, healers, whatever, that are like my trusted board of directors of my personal health and well being, that I know, like, okay, these are my people. And we're all on the same page. We all agree, right? We all agree on this paradigm that everything's connected. We all agree that trauma is what trauma is, and these are the things that will help it, and these are the things that will make it worse, right? Like we're all in agreement. We're like a community, right? And there is a community. It's just not on like community.com or something where you're like, okay, like here are the people that think this way, and I can just like easily tap in and get what I need. It's I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, one of it is that at least 90% of the treatments that I've done in the last 25 years were not covered by insurance. I had to pay out of pocket. They weren't even necessarily recognized by the medical community as valid forms of healing, all the way up until writing my books. Like my whole platform now is that creativity is medicine, writing is medicine. Like I'm not going to get a doctor to agree with me about that unless it's like some weird like transpersonal doctor that like lives in like Northern California or something. So the whole thing is problematic because it's also really difficult to monetize all the things that I've done. I mean, I have paid for them, but once you have this skill set of movement, of breath, of meditation, of like, once you have this skill set, the creativity, the support system, you're not like spending thousands and thousands of dollars, right? On medical visits and medications and health management and illness management. And like you become you become sovereign in a different way. You have a different kind of agency. And that's not the way the system is set up. We're not supposed to do that. That's like getting out of the matrix. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to stay in the matrix. And so there's just like a lot of challenges. If someone knows someone like you or someone like me, we can probably put them on the right path. We can have the conversations, or maybe they find it in a book or a podcast. But it's a gap for
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. So we were talking about some things and then we kind of went down a different path and I don't want to lose them. So back to like we'll call it spring cleaning, like the annual cleaning, the quarterly cleaning of all of this, just the buildup. What are the things that either you do or you recommend people do to do that cleaning?
Yeah. All the things.
All-
Meditation, mindfulness, yoga, movement, breath work, saunas, cold plunge, acupuncture, changing my diet, detoxing, fasting, sleeping more time in nature, writing, creativity, journaling, dancing, conversations, support groups, therapy, mentorship. I mean, just like so many things. Herbs. I have a whole drawer next to my bedside table. It has kava, it has passion flower, it has holy basil, it has valerian. I have all my like kitchen herbs, organic honey, ginger tea, echinacea for when I'm like, I mean, just like a lifetime of practices and medicines that are non-pharmaceutical, like just a whole massive library, mindset practices, retreats, travel. I mean, just it goes on and on and on and on. Not to mention like the hundreds of different healers that have had their hands on me. Like, and I'm someone who's traveled to 50 countries. I've lived in half a dozen countries. I've lived in half the states in the US. I've lived in Guatemala, Puerto Rico, New Mexico, Tel Aviv. Like there's no rock unturned. Like if there is a rock with something under the rock that can help you, I have found the rock and I have turned it over. It has been like my lifelong passion and quest to find these things. And I feel like the type of person who is competent and confident in meeting another human, hearing what's going on, and saying, okay, I think this is your path forward. I feel very confident in being able to offer that to others because I've tried all the things, and I've also learned there's something called contraindications in the medical language, which means not all medicine is good for all people. So, if you have thyroid problem, you're not going to do ketamine therapy, or like there's just like these things where these two things don't go together. You're not supposed to do them together, but you have to be trained and educated about what that is. Like you have to know what conditions are appropriate for what medicines. In general, you're in really safe territory with meditation, yoga,
Yeah.
breath work. But even so, like I knew a lady that had broken her back and yoga was a terrible idea. And every time she did
Yeah.
it, she was like in pain for months. So like even that, you need to be mindful and you need to listen to your body. But you would not believe how much is available to you. You wouldn't believe it. There's so much that's available to you,
Yeah. And
you know?
it's with all of that that's available, it's just really heartbreaking that the path that most people take is to the doctor, to the pharmacy, and that's just really unfortunate. And it's part of I know it's your mission, it's part of my mission to make people aware of other ways. And to your point, and you brought up the body keeps the score, and I know we've talked about like somatic practices, and you've also mentioned like you feel like you have healed from your trauma. And so talk a little bit about like what that feels like, knowing what it felt like to have trauma and now what it feels like to kind of be completely healed.
I mean, did you ever have the experience where like something shitty was happening for a while? Like maybe you were getting migraines, or maybe like you twisted your ankle and now every time you step on your foot, it hurts your ankle. Like, did you ever have that experience and then you wake up one day and it's gone and you're like, wait a minute, my ankle used to hurt. Like, my ankle doesn't hurt today. And you're like, holy shit. And then you're kind of like, look at me, right? Did that ever happen to you with like
Oh, yeah.
some physical
Oh,
stuff?
yeah.
It's like exactly the same feeling where like there was this like purging and purging and purging and healing and healing and purging. And then one day I woke up and I was like, I don't have anxiety. Like I was like, this is what other people feel like. Like I could like go places and like I wasn't like sweaty. I wasn't like looking for the exit. I wasn't like uh, I was like, what? It was just like I could walk on that foot again, right?
Mhm.
I was just I felt like this is what it feels like to be normal. That was just like this is how it's supposed to be. Like this feels like well-being. This feels like health.
Mhm.
It just felt like health in a way that I had known for my whole life. Something's not right. I don't feel right. And I write about in my book, obviously, all the things that happen. Like I grew up in a home with addiction, mental illness, domestic violence. Like, so obviously I had like massive amounts of trauma, but at no point was I like unaware that it was something was not right.
Mm.
And so that's why I was relentless in trying to figure out how to fix what wasn't right. I mean, it took like 45 years or something to figure it out. Like, it didn't figure it out like swiftly, but like now I get for whatever life I have left to feel healthy. So like that's good, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Right. Like a overnight success after
Yeah.
45 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the alternative is to never get to that point,
Yes.
you know, which it is, to your point, it's a hard path. It is a lot of work, but I think just to hear you talk about it, it's like worth it.
Like, I get to feel good. Like, your whole thing, like, feel as good as it looks. I get to feel good. I didn't feel good. I, like, never felt good. I would have, like, momentary breaks or, like, momentary spaces of feeling good, usually when I was like, "Oh, I'm, like, falling in love for, like, 5 minutes," or I'm you know what I mean? I just want a prize. Like, when it was, like, heightened dopamine, heightened when there was some kind of heightened whatever, I would have like a bit of a relief. But then, I mean, within a very short amount of time, I was just like back in it again.
Mhm.
And it's so satisfying. like, like so satisfied.
Yeah. Just to be healthy and happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would have thought like it's got to be so hard
I know.
to
As you
just
were talking
feel
about,
good?
like, the sprained ankle, the biggest thing I can, like, think of off the top of my head to relate to it is after 9/11, I developed extreme anxiety about flying, and I was in a chapter of my life where I was traveling pretty frequently, so it was becoming, like, pretty debilitating, and I had to went to the doctor and I got anxiety medicine to help me get through, but I worked on it, and one day I woke up and I was not afraid to fly anymore, and I tell you the difference that makes, like, not dreading it's like I would dread every flight, but then as soon as I got somewhere, like, all I could think about was the flight home, and so I couldn't, like, enjoy my time anywhere or it's just so I totally relate to that. You're just, like, looking for the exit or looking for whatever, and then it's like, okay, I could get home and be okay for a minute, but then I knew, like, 10 days later, here we go again, and so to be able to get off of a roller coaster like that feels really freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so whatever you did to solve that, you just have to keep doing that.
Mhm.
Like whatever you did in that time period to like break that experience, that fear, like that's what you need to repeat over and over again for like all the different ways that you feel frozen, or
Yeah.
you feel scared. You just have to
Yeah.
keep doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I really wanna make sure that we talk about I think you mentioned to me one time when we were talking that, like, you realized the missing piece for you was creativity or nature even. And I know, like, this is what you do now is you help people write, you help people tell their stories. So talk about, like, how important creativity is in the whole puzzle, how you realize that, how you address it, and what you really, like, help people do in that, like, I guess,
Yeah, I
space.
didn't it was such a blind spot for me because I was very much stuck in what we were talking about earlier, which is like the Western paradigm and the like, you fix the problem here. All the problem is right here. That you know, it was like the thing that writing did for me that nothing else had ever done for me is that when I displayed my whole, because I write memoir, I write about my own life. When I wrote my whole life from beginning to end and I told myself my story, I could finally see the forest from the trees. I could see the whole thing. I could see the patterns, the choices that I made, the bad decisions that I made. I could see in the writing and feel in the writing the places where I was still resentful or still critical of myself, like the whole, and also that digestion process that I mentioned earlier of like digesting the energy and the emotions. As I'm writing, I'm crying or I'm raging about the thing I'm writing about. I'm doing that metabolism. I'm digesting as I'm doing the creative practice. So it's not, for me, it's not just important that you do the practice. That's like one part of it. It's also important that you're witnessed. So when I was finally witnessed, when other people are allowed to hear and see my story, then I wasn't stuck in the aloneness. I don't think we can heal in aloneness. I just don't think we can. I think healing requires, and you'll see this with trees in the forest. I don't know if you know this, but when a tree starts to get sick, all the other tree roots start to send nutrients to the tree that's sick underground. And like, I think that's a human condition as well. You need the other tree roots to send you the nutrients that you need. I don't believe it. I don't believe that humans heal in a vacuum. It wasn't true for me. I could not do it by myself. And so there's something about being witnessed also in all the things that made me who I was that helped me gather strength and power and courage and self appreciation and self compassion, like all these things that I needed as part of the healing journey. And the whole thing then became very medicinal. It just became very medicinal. When I was writing, I was also spending a lot of time in nature because I believe that we need to like also, it's kind of like you get rid of that static electricity. When you get outside and you just get in the air and you're just like your feet are on the ground, there's something called earthing. There's all these things, these ways that we kind of like refresh. Or when you get in the ocean and the salt water is like cleansing you, right? I was doing all that as well. And I started to develop a really intimate relationship with nature, which also fed this restoration, this restorative process. So these were critical pieces that were missing for me. I had gotten myself all the way to the point where like I understood trauma. I was using all of the different tools and practices, but it was this last piece of really recognizing that I'm just as much a part of the planet as the air and the water and the fire and the plants. Like somehow we think that we're like, what do we think we are? I don't like somehow we think that we're what? We're like little robots or it's very weird. We're house plants. We're house plants with feelings. Like you would die if I took water away from you for like a week. You would die. You're a house plant. You need sun. You need water. Like somehow we have these weird notions. Anyway, so when I restored my relationship to the family of things, which is water and earth, all of it brought me back to life. It brought me back to wholeness. The etymology of the word healing is wholeness, holos. How are you supposed to be whole if you're completely estranged from your family and from your planet and from your own soul and your own story? Like, how are you supposed to be whole? Doesn't even make any sense. So that was the missing piece for me that really, sealed the deal at the end.
Yeah. And so now you help other, not just women, right? Like anyone, men and women, you help them with the part of telling their story, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is challenging for people, but I do it in a way like I'm describing to you, which is we do a little bit of hard work and then we go outside and play and we eat some good food and we take a nap and then we do some hard work because this is not meant to be like a boot camp, something, this isn't like best-selling book in 3 days. That's not what this is. This is like, let's put ourselves back together like Humpty Dumpty over here and let's like learn new habits and restore in the process of creating, which is like a very unique approach, especially now, like technology and AI, and make a book in 30 minutes. And like, no, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think like the more and more people I talk to who I will say like on one side or the other of this, who are like on the hamster wheel in the rat race, just probably think they don't have time to slow down and do any of this work. When you have those conversations, like they have lost touch with creating or creativity or anything like that. The other side of it, people who I would say are like more in touch with who they are on the healing journey, not just on the learning journey. They have tapped into some kind of creativity. And I do truly believe that it is a very important piece of the puzzle that we are here, like think about people you mentioned like 10,000 years ago, like we just sat around and created things. We were like creative beings, and anymore, there's a lot of people who can get through a lot of their lives without really creating anything. And it leaves a lot of emptiness. And yeah, I think it does. There's some kind of, I don't really know how to describe it, but it's this layer of you don't really get to know yourself if you're not being creative because you don't get to see what you're capable of.
Yeah. Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Well
So
said.
I think I like it. I like what you're doing. I think it's
And you're
very,
being creative. You're making a podcast. You're making
yeah.
programming. You're doing all the things. So, you're doing it in real time too.
I am, and, but I had to get to a point too where I was, like, burned out, didn't really know what was going on, wasn't feeling good, wasn't feeling like myself, and, the podcast was really I'm putting it out there that I'm gonna do this thing, and I need to do this because I need to tap into some creativity. I just need to make something, to do something, and so it really started as, like, an creative journey, inspiration, and then it led to I made a journal to go along with it, and it's really like snowballed into now, like an actual organization where we're creating some deliverables and making a difference. But I just gotten to a point where I don't think I was making anything. I was making dinner, but I wasn't really making anything else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And even
yeah,
as you talk about it, like your whole face lights up when you talk about it, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, and I mean, I love it, and it's like the more I make, the more I wanna make, and I know I just shared with you, I've just started the Artist's Way. I'm really excited to get into that, but I think for all the same reasons that I think those things are just so important to be able to spend time with yourself. It's a scary thing for a lot of people, that's why we don't slow down, that's why we don't sit in silence. That's why people don't meditate. They don't want to hear what's going on in their own head. But I think like I'm in this era where I'm like welcoming it. Who am I? What am I about? What do I like? What do I not like? Um, what do I personally think about certain things? That's another thing. I think my husband had this. He also has a podcast. And he had this guy on the podcast, and he said this stat, which I'm just like crazy. Only 1% of people on the planet have unique thoughts. And so I've just been in this that'll put you in a real tailspin. Like, do I have any unique thoughts? Am I only thinking about what other people are thinking about? So it's like, how can I like think? And I think that's something that like a lot of people just aren't really doing, just not
Yeah.
really thinking or not thinking. Obviously, 99% of people aren't doing it. So big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was awesome. I don't know if there are any points that I've left that we didn't circle back to, but
I
if
feel
there,
like we closed the loop on most of it. And
yeah,
also, I'm accessible to people. I
yeah,
do
I was
like
gonna say.
Zoom calls, if you go to my website, which is just my name, gabriellepellici.com, if you go to the work with me page, I do free Zoom calls to have these conversations if people want to follow up. And obviously there's a lot of like resources and names of different practices and things in the books, which you could get in paperback or audio. And I think actually if you're like a Spotify paid member, I think you can even listen to them for free on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so the resources are there and people can, reach out. I love I
Yep.
love talking to people.
Yeah. All of her contact information, book links, website, all in the show notes. She is super accessible and, if you can't tell, a lot of fun to talk to. And so I've enjoyed getting to know her. Lucky to live pretty near each other. So that's fun. And yeah, I love everything you're doing, everything you're talking about. I just think it's really important, and especially in this time that we're living in, where there is so much information and there is just so much tunnel vision on the way, and there is no one way, there's a million ways. So I love that you
So
are.
this is so great that you're able to share all this with your listeners.
Definitely. Well, thanks for being here, and if you all have any questions for her, definitely reach out.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you guys, and have a great day. Thanks for listening to Life Intended.
If something from this episode landed with you, stirred something up, or gave you a new perspective, share it, tag us, leave a review. That's how this work reaches more women who really need it.
Life Intended is more than just a podcast. It's a movement back to self-trust, personal power, and living with intention.
We're just getting started.
So keep showing up, keep tuning in. If you're ready for more support on your path, head to lifeintended.co. We've got tools, community, and programs to meet you where you are. Until next time.